Google Mail accounts were hacked in China. The issue of internet freedom in that nation seems to have caused more and more tension with the United States. The newspaper of the Chinese Communist Party published an article just yesterday accusing the U.S. of mounting a, quote, hacker brigade in China, and also cites the use of YouTube and Twitter to apparently wage online warfare. Well, joining me now to see how these recent allegations could affect ties between these two nations, U.S. and China, investigative journalist Webster Tarpley. Webster, thank you for joining me here live in our studios. So first, Google says that they're being hacked in China. Then the Chinese government releases this article saying that the U.S. are the hackers. Seems like a lot of back and forth here. I want you to break this issue down for us. Who's right, who's wrong? Or is this a case where it's kind of a vicious cycle, just going to keep going and going?
Let me stress, first of all, this is an extremely ominous development for the world, much more serious than I think many people have grasped. And it's a war of words now. It's not just the United States picking on some country in the Middle East, but it's the United States picking on a superpower, a great power. So this is the big leagues. Now, Mrs. Clinton last Thursday demanded that no country exercise censorship against the Internet. And, of course, that's the Internet dominated by the United States. She also demanded a corporate lockstep by U.S. firms, including Google, that they would stand and fight against the Chinese demands for countermeasures, what they call censorship. The people from Google went to the White House last week, met with the National Security Council, and now Google says they will stand and fight. And what they've come up with sounds very much like an ultimatum to China, saying, we'll obey your laws for a little while, but maybe not very long. That's a recipe for big trouble. Microsoft sounds much smarter. They say they will comply with Chinese laws. In the meantime, the United States is running webcasts from the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. They're preparing a formal complaint. Now, I would say the issue posed for China goes far beyond Internet. This is now stability and sovereignty. And if you look at what China was like in the 1920s, carved up into 24 enclaves of warlords, you can see what they're concerned about. So the response from the Chinese Foreign Ministry is vehement. They say, this is groundless denigration. This is, no, we don't need lessons from the United States. They're attempting hegemonic domination, naked political scheming in the press, online warfare, information imperialism. And now concerning Iran specifically, they're saying that the U.S. is attempting to create a color revolution in Iran, and they talk about a cyber army and a hacker brigade. What could that be? Well, the Washington Post today praises the Global Internet Freedom Consortium. They demand more taxpayer money for them. This is the Falun Gong-linked organization that claims to be able to breach the Iranian and Chinese firewalls using software like FreeGate and UltraSurf. Or could the cyber army be the Iranian cyber army, which seems to have gotten itself into a hacking war with people inside
Webster,
China?
Yeah, I want to take it back to China. You know, if Google does pull out, you mentioned some other companies who you say are smarter because they're complying with Chinese law. Who's going to be the next huge search engine then in China?
Well, it's probably this Baidu, which is run by the Chinese themselves, and I think that may not be a surprise. But again, this is geopolitics now. Right. This is power politics at the highest level. Very big stuff. You can see that there's also an attempt to split Russia and China on this, using Iran as a gambit. In other words, the U.S. is demanding support for sanctions against Iran. And if China says no and Russia says yes, or the other way around, then the U.S. will try to drive a wedge. Now, people in the United States are fed up with this. This whole business with regime change, which is the underlying idea. People who supported Obama thought they were voting against the neocon Bush-Cheney notion of regime change. And plus, of course, the UN Charter is very clear. Interference in the internal affairs of sovereign states is simply inadmissible. So the question is, how far is the U.S. going to push this? What will be the consequences in the Middle East, Japan, many other parts of the world? And maybe we'll know more when Obama gives his State of the Union on Wednesday. If he starts a big blather about China, then we'll know that the U.S. is essentially going to push ahead.
Well, investigative journalist Webster Tarpley, thank you for your analysis. He says even